So, Leanne, welcome to my show, One for the Road. We've known each other for a few months now from Instagram, and you are Sober Little Mothered. And I love the work that you do. I think you're amazing. And I've invited you on today because I know your story is really, really powerful. And you've kindly agreed to share it today. So, firstly, how are you?
Yeah, thank you, Dave. Firstly, thank you for having me on and allowing me to voice, my backstory on such a platform. I have to say, this podcast has personally helped me through my sobriety, as have you. Feel that we have gone a bit full circle because my sobriety wouldn't have really started if all those months ago, 20 something months ago, when I started looking at sobriety, I hadn't found your account. And I have reached out to you, and we've been doing things together, and I'm so grateful. But yeah, just thank you so much for just doing all the things that you do, and hopefully I'm another person behind you now banging that drum as loud as we possibly can. So thank you.
Oh, honestly, you are doing so much amazing work. So thank you too, because it's powerful that we bang the drum together in this
Yeah.
wonderful community. Um, so do you want to wind it right back to when you was a little girl?
So the story starts, I think, with the trauma, which then progressed to the drinking. Such a long time ago, as a little girl, I was adopted into a wonderful family that have just treated me no different to anyone else within the family. I have been loved, I have been cared for. But I think throughout childhood, because I was always aware I was adopted and the things that did go on and the reason for my adoption, I think that I always struggled to find connection, to find the piece of the puzzle, really. I think I struggled to identify with family. I always, and I still do today, have questions of where do I get this from? Why do I look like this? And I think throughout childhood, you don't really know things are affecting you, but till later on in life when you look back and you say, oh, actually, I never identified as any, I couldn't find identification. So maybe that's why I was so lost along the way. Um, I had a very nice childhood. I was bullied at school horrifically for being adopted, which was something that I think, even as a child, I was quite proud of and quite open, because my parents were always really open about it with me, and I think that helped. Because of the colour of my hair as well, I don't think it helped. I was little orphan Annie. Um, but I just kind of got on with it, and I turned to, and I think this was the start of my addictive behaviour, turned to food, got very large at a very young age, put on a lot of weight, then would get more bullied and then would eat more. And, it sort of just, there was just too much to cope with. And I think even from an early age, when we were on a Sunday round for dinner, round the table, there was this thing that was called wine. And, it had been, I always saw the adults drinking it, and I saw, people having a good time and being these people that, I wanted to be this confident and this shining person that had this voice and could speak. Because I think for a lot of my childhood, I just wanted to hide. I didn't know who I was from not knowing my identification. And I didn't really, I didn't have a set group of friends. I sort of dipped in and out of everyone. So when, at 9, 10 years old, you're offered a glass of wine around the table, and it's this magical thing, and you take it because everybody else does it. And it was just the acceptable odd glass of wine, or if we were on holiday, there'd be some wine or half a beer and you could have it. My parents wouldn't actively encourage it, but it was there. um then secondary school, um you know I knew I was around alcohol, but it wasn't a big deal because I'd already had it. So I was just going to have more of it. And it's, you know, I would sneak it into school. I would drink it after school. I would drink it on the 894 bus on the way home. Parties, I would be known as the one that would get all the booze and turn up with it all, because I think for a lot of my time as well, which I am ashamed about now, I think because of my addiction throughout several things in my life, I've been a feeder. So I wanted to get drunk, so I'd buy alcohol so other people did it, so I'd feel better about myself. You know, the same with cocaine and weed later on in life. And you know, it does haunt me, but you can't change some of the things that you do. So alcohol growing up for me as a teenager was massive, was just massive. Everything, you know, from Thursday, knew didn't have to do much at school on a Friday, so would try and get really drunk after school. You know, I think my parents were aware at some points. We had a few conversations, but I don't think they knew to the level that I was doing it, or the fact that, you know, it would be in the locker at school as well. After school, I went to college. That was the key to opening up the door to drugs. I'd done booze, I'd been pissed, I'd been to every party going, and now I wanted more. So then it was weed, and then it was cocaine, and then it was ecstasy. I completely didn't care about going to college. I only went to college to enable me to get out of the house, to allow me to do all the things that I wanted to do. And I remember one of my lecturers, Nick Hunt, there was a pub called the Dirty Duck by the river in Stratford where I went to college. And he came the one day and he sat down and he said, if you're not going to come to my fucking lesson, then I will come to you, because you are not going to waste what you have and what you are.
Wow.
And I did. And I looked at him and I promised him that I'd start going to lectures and everything like that. And I didn't. And I know it pains him as much, because I did have the shining, you know, potential, the talent, and I scraped through, Dave. Like, you know, I didn't do all the things that I could have achieved, and I can only learn from them and not make the same mistakes again. But that was kind of like a wake-up call for me, which I took in for about 3 days and then just went on an absolute fucking bender and fucked everything off, and, you know, caused massive destruction. You know, I think my middle name for a long time was self-sabotage. You know, I was just key to destroying myself. I was a professional dancer for a very long time, and then after college I got into it. I got offered a place at several high dance schools. I had a really bad accident and I was injured. And also within the training of dancing as well, I don't know if people know this, but it's something that I'm working upon. Lots of ballerinas, for the long days, you know, we are bashing coke. We are bashing coke at 5:30 in the morning to go and stand there to be shouted at till our feet bleed and then have to do it again. You know, you can't be a person because you're just this moving thing that doesn't have feelings, that will get up, get on your toes, get on your points. You know, you're doing 18-hour days and you're probably about 5.5 stone because you're not eating and you're just sniffing coke. And I think it's something that I just really want to highlight in the future, and I'm trying to work with a few dance schools at the moment to try and, you know, steer the path away from it, because, you know, you've got the celebrity lifestyle, you've got all these different lifestyles that, you know, and I don't think that anyone thinks that these little ballerinas are actually raving cokeheads, and it is a massive problem within the dancing industry. So obviously after my career ended at the grand old age of 23, which
Wow.
was very, very painful. You know, what am I going to do now? I've fucked up college, I've fucked up my dancing career, you know, just everything I seem to just destroy. After the dancing, so say around 23, that was it then. I just didn't care about anything or anyone. I turned into a human being that I look back at now that I didn't know. I was selfish. You know, I'd have jobs just to pay bills and to get gear. I wasn't motivated. I wasn't happy. I would just go from relationship to relationship to relationship. But above work or a career or relationships, the only thing that was keeping me going, or I strived for, was the Thursday, the Friday night in the pub, the Saturday. I then went into a job of recruitment, which is also a heavy drinking culture. But this is the thing, throughout my career, I just used to find jobs where I could drink, because it was, it enabled me. And I know that I wasn't going to walk out of that job because I could get what I wanted within that place. Recruitment was definitely the completely wrong move for me, especially doing the catering sector, which just allowed me to be in pubs, bars, restaurants, and hotels drinking all day, smoozing all the clients. It was just a terrible, terrible, terrible thing, and everything spiraled out of control. I think, and I talk to my friends now about this, everyone knew, but no one really knew. And I know that sounds mad, but when I say that, everyone knew that I was this person that relied on drugs and drink and probably did have a problem. But no one knew I was that girl that was getting up, and rather than going to the toilet first thing in the morning, it was a line of cocaine on the side that if I didn't have, I'd, be scraping backs of credit cards or looking in my bag for like bits of dust that were probably cigarette ash and stuff like that, and I'd still sniff it just to crave that addiction that I had. Nothing really got better. I mean, for years and years I was in this massive spiral. Like, I got out of recruitment because I think at one point I thought, yeah, this is not doing me any favors at all. So then I decided to run a bar with my friend, because I thought that was an even better idea. Obviously that was the start of sobriety, really, I think, looking back at it, because detrimentally on several occasions I almost died. It was days, it was weeks. I would go on benders for weeks. I would sleep at the bar. I would take money out of the till to buy drugs. Me and my friend both had horrific drink and drug problems, and we were running a bar, and it was
How old were
just
you when you started this bar?
so it was 28.
Right, so
And I
28
remember,
years old, and it sounds to me like right from the off, your life has been quite chaotic, highs and
yeah,
lows, your adoption when you were a child, and then the weight gain, and then being bullied at school. Then you became a dancer. That caused problems. Then you had the terrible accident, and it's so many peaks and troughs in your life. And it's, you pick recruitment because of the drinking, then you go and pick a bar, which is, in hindsight, a real road to disaster, isn't it?
I think, as you say, there's so many peaks and troughs, and the highs have just been like, at some points when I was in recruitment, the money I was earning, like, was phenomenal.
Mm.
Being such a good dancer at the age I was is, still is heartwarming. But the lows have been really, really low, and I've let them continue for years and years. And when I was at the bar, I remember the glass wash man coming in to fix the glass washer, and he looked at me and he said, "You need to eat something, girl." And I said to him, "I've had my breakfast this morning. I've had half a bottle of wine, 2 lines of coke, and a spliff." And he laughed, but that was the truth at
Mm.
9:30 in the morning. And it could have gone two ways. That bar could have been the death of me, or what it actually turned out to be in roles reverse was the life of me, and it made me change everything.
Can I ask, at that exact time, what did you think of yourself?
I I just thought every day and all day, because I think because of adoption, because I've had some disastrous relationships. I always go for people that need fixing, I feel, and I think that I can fix them, but I can't, and detrimentally in time I've ended up damaging myself more. I can't really answer that question, because I think for such a long time I thought nothing. I didn't think I was bad. I didn't think I was good. I just thought I was nothing. That I felt sometimes that I wasn't worthy of existence. I know that I felt that a lot of the time. I didn't, and towards the later years, so after about 26, you know, oh, I have also missed a bit out as well, which I will just briefly go into, but I lived in Cavos for 2 years as a holiday rep as well, after the whole dancing career thing. That also didn't, it was like I was actively trying to just destroy. I would find things that, one, would enable me to drink and do drugs, and two, to not have to be who I was, to hide always behind things. And I could never hold a conversation with anyone unless I'd have like had a drink. And as I say, I think I just didn't feel worthy of existence. I felt, and some days I look back at that girl who I was, and she was numb. She actually, she felt worthless, but she felt numb, and she didn't care whether she took a breath. She didn't care if she was dead. She didn't acknowledge anything or anyone around her. You know, I know that you can probably relate to this, but when you are, I identify as a functioning alcoholic. A lot of people didn't know I was doing what I did. I still got up for work. I still got dressed. I still looked, you know, nice, and, you know, still washed my clothes, paid my bills, you know, had a roof over my head. But, you know, it's, you become very selfish. There is nothing around you but you. There is only what you need to feed yourself, your mind, your body, and essentially your addiction. And it's only stepping out of it and looking back that I think, oh, that girl, even though she had all those problems, even though she was an addict, she still had so much going for her. And I wish I could step back and, one, give that girl a hug, and two, you know, tell her that everything will be all right, and that there is special magic within her that she just needs to pull out, you know. And I think, and just, I wasn't very good at, which is funny now because the amount I talk, as you know, on Instagram and things like this, but I just wasn't very good at talking. Just wasn't very good at talking. And when you hold stuff in for such a long time, decades, and you've just destroyed yourself through alcohol, you just become an ultimate mess, like an untiable knot. I always like to refer to knots, that I was just so twisted. I was so bitter, and I was so twisted. Towards the end of the bar life, I found out I was pregnant with my daughter Darcy, who is now almost 5. Can't believe how the time has gone so quick. It was a shock. She wasn't planned. I wasn't in a loving relationship. Best thing though that has ever happened to me. Darcy's father left me during pregnancy, so that was a bitter pill to swallow as well, knowing that I was going to do all of this alone. Went for just a normal scan, 20-week scan, and then they called me into another room to have another scan, and then they called me into another room to have another scan, and I thought, there's something going on here. I was called into a room, and they informed me that Darcy was had a heart condition called pulmonary atresia, that they could see some other things on her heart as well, and they couldn't tell me this, like, the other things, what they would be. I had a list of different things that she could also be born with that were linked to cognitive heart disease and all other things that could possibly she could have. And I was took into another room and given 10 minutes to make the decision to stop her heart and give birth to her, or whether to have her with only a 4% chance of her surviving that anyway. And I just remember looking at my 70-year-old dad, who'd come with me because he'd never let me do anything on my own, bless him, and say, "Get me the fuck out of this room. Get me out of this room." And I had to that day go with hope. And at this point, I'd stopped drinking because I didn't drink in my pregnancy because I felt so sick all the time. And I'm not going to lie, and I'm going to be really honest. I think if I had the opportunity and I could have, I would have drank while being pregnant. And I know that's just me being honest, you know, and it's not something that I'm proud of, but I've always said recovery is about honesty, because after so many years of lying, you just, I never want to tell a lie again. So it was a very difficult pregnancy. Obviously, because I had stopped drinking, I was sort of getting a grip on my mental health and, you know, feelings. I started to feel things, Dave, and I wasn't used to feeling things. It wasn't nice. Obviously, during pregnancy, knowing that the chance that you're going to have the child that you're carrying is so slim, it was just horrible. I don't have any pictures of me pregnant. I hid my pregnancy. I remember someone saying to me, "God, are you pregnant?" And I was 8.5 months pregnant because I hadn't told anyone, because I didn't want to have those horrible, awkward conversations of, you know, my daughter's probably going to die. Then on the 2nd of December, I went into labour, very fast, very scary. My elected due date was 2 weeks after when she was coming. It wasn't the joyous moment that everyone else has when they're getting the bag to go to hospital. I remember my dad phoning my sister and saying, "You need to get here in case she doesn't make it." And like my whole family came to the hospital just in case it was goodbye. And I had her. And I remember really clearly saying to the nurse, you know, is when she came out, she was crying, and I was told that, you know, she wouldn't probably cry, she'd be blue, and she was crying and crying, almost like a scream. And I just looked at the nurse and was like, "Is that my baby?" The pure shock of it all. I didn't see Darcy then for several hours. I knew from the looks of what people were giving and the running around and the whispering and the just the sheer chaos that there was, you know, something else severely wrong as well. They took her. I didn't see her. I didn't touch her. I didn't see any part of her. She just got took in an ambulance to Birmingham Children's Hospital. I think it was, yeah, about 6.5 hours later, I discharged myself out of Heartlands Hospital in Birmingham under I was told not to, but I did. And I went to Birmingham Children's Hospital because I wanted to see my daughter, because I knew from the phone calls that the surgeons had phoned me. She had to go straight into surgery, and I really wanted to meet her. And I got to Birmingham Children's Hospital, and sod's law this is, Dave, that the 2 lifts that are there were both out of order. So after having a cesarean, I had to then climb 2 flights of stairs, and I'll never forget the adrenaline or the power I felt walking up those stairs. It was like I had wings. It was literally like I was flying. And I got to the ward and I looked at the nurses, and they didn't have to talk to me. They didn't have to say anything. I knew where she was. I could feel her. And the minute that I saw her, it was, I can't ever explain to anyone. We melted into each other. And since that day, we're just part of each other. Between the thousands of bloody wires coming out of her, you know, she was like a small handheld dot, but she was so big because she had that many wires and tubes and things coming out of her. But we melted together, and I then was took into a room and told, you know, she had pulmonary atresia, VSD, of fellows. She had imperated anus, so she wasn't born with a bottom. So if she then went to the toilet, you know, that would cause her to die. So it was quickly put a colostomy bag on her. You know, there were several things, and the journey was really, really quite tough. So I had her, and we didn't leave hospital for 6 months. We were in there from the day that she was born for 6 months. So, you know, the nice part of, you know, you see these people lying on the sofas with the babies lying on their chest and stuff like that. My time with my newborn was spent around watching lots of other people and their struggles. And this is when alcohol started to creep in again. You know, there was a pub called the Jekyll and Hyde opposite, and I would have friends come in to say hi to me and hi to Darcy and my parents, and it would be like the pub break, you know. And I can do a bottle of wine in 6 seconds, you know. So I would leave my child in intensive care, and this sounds terrible, but I want people to know this so they don't do it. I would leave intensive care and I would run over to the pub and I would drink as much as I could in a half an hour or an hour, and then go back and sit there. And the pain was atrocious, and it will always be. And I think because it wasn't just what I was going through on the ward, you know, I saw 6 children die, and I saw the devastation of their families, of what they had to go through as well. So the drinking, the longer I was there, the heavier the drinking got. I got out with Darcy and we came home and things started to chill out a bit. I was very stressed, you know, but I had this baby where I didn't have people around me to. So the drinking really stopped in the daytime, but hit hard at bedtime. So I would do all day, you know, the extra care that I have to give Darcy all the time as well is quite intense. And when I first had her home for the first 6 months, we had an aptomat, which is where it basically alarms if they stop breathing. So even at nighttime when she was asleep, I would put my alarm on my phone every half an hour. And I did that for 6 months. I literally didn't sleep for 6 months. So with the drinking, you know, on top of that, to where I was just trying to numb it out just to get some. I didn't want to feel any of these feelings. So drinking was just numbing everything out. And then we got to the point where I would put her to bed, say about 7, and I would drink 2, 3, 4 bottles of wine a night. And I would find that normal. You know, I wouldn't say that I was smashed off my face. I wouldn't say that I was unable to care for my child. I'd call myself tipsy because I was so used to drinking that quantity and that amount. It didn't really seem to touch the sides. So months later, started to try and get my life back. We have always been and will always be in and out of hospital. Darcy's on operation 39, you know, 4 of them being open heart surgery. But the older she got, you know, I remember the first time my parents had her overnight, instead of taking some time and rest and relaxation, I went on a coke bender. I went on a bloody coke bender. And when they dropped her home, I was coming home at the time they were dropping her home. And then, you know, I'm sure me and my parents have spoken about this and we're very honest about it, and I'm honest to all my friends. But, you know, it just got out of control. It just got so out of control. And then in 2019, in the September, I started to feel really, I've never felt mentally stable. I've always had counselling. I've always been on tablets. I've always been on antidepressants, but this was more than that. This was, you know, the depths of feeling worthlessness. But I was planning my death. You know, I've still got the letter that I wrote to Darcy with my goodbye, and it was dark. It was a dark time, and I just remember my friend Jodie coming round and saying, "We need to help you." And I just broke down because that was it. Someone knew that I needed that help. And she just kept saying to me, "I know that today, tomorrow, or the day after, I'm going to get that call or a policeman at my house telling me that you're dead. And I can't do that." So from that day, I got some help through Mind. I went to the doctors. I had private counselling. I had CBT. I was diagnosed with postnatal depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, anxiety, depression. And I didn't realise how severe all my trauma had been throughout the years, especially the reason behind my adoption. And I got help, and my help was for my mental health, because at this point, Dave, even though I knew I was heavily drinking, you know, I was just drinking to obviously help my mental health. I still had I was very detached from the fact that I had a drinking problem. And I think that it's only recently that I've actually come to terms with that. You know, when I first went sober, one of the first things I used to say to people is, "I'm sober, but I'm not an alcoholic. You know, I don't have a drink problem," because, you know, the word stigma, which I'll come to later. But I got help for my mental health, and then obviously coming to the realization of why I was drinking and what the drinking was for, and then actually discussing, you know, the quantities that I was drinking, because at the start of getting my mental health, I was still drinking. And one of my counselors said to me, "You know, if you are serious about this, every aspect of your life has to be stripped back. And can you not just go 2 months without alcohol and see what change that it does?" And it was like, I remember coming out of the counselling session, and I went straight to the pub, didn't I? Like an idiot, straight to the pub. But I had one pint, and I thought about what he'd said to me. And I thought, actually, the only thing that I haven't tried throughout my life is taking alcohol away. You know, I've swapped groups of friends when people have pissed me off. I've changed jobs when I don't like my job anymore. And, you know, have I really looked at this thing called alcohol? You know, drugs after Darcy didn't really happen, to be honest, because I just never wanted to do them around her. I would have a bender if she was away for the evening. But drink, you just think it's this thing that, because it's in the supermarket, it's all right. And because everyone else does it, it's okay, and it's not. So it took me, so this was September 2009, and it took me till July 2020 to come round to the idea of quitting booze. I mean, I tried and I failed, and then I'd try and I'd fail. But each time I tried and I had a lapse, it was never as big as the one before, and it was never a full-on bender. It was like my mind was just trying to convince myself that this is something that I should do, but I had to do it slowly. I couldn't just delve into it. And on the 25th of July 2020 was my last drink, and I would like to say forever. I feel, because of my addictive personality, I can never say never. But my God, I've worked so hard that I hope it is forever, and that things don't go back to the way they were, because I never knew for 38 years, well, 36, I'm going to say, give two almost of sobriety, of who I was, you know, and I can't get those things back and I look at all the times when I thought I was having fun or living this, you know, this great life because I had money and I was out all the time and I was partying, but I don't remember my 18th birthday. I don't remember my 21st. I don't remember my 30th. I don't remember all of these monumental moments of my life, you know, and it's just, it's devastating. It's things you can't ever get back. In the last 2 years as well of my sobriety, I've lost my cousin Paul to alcohol at the age of 40. And I've lost my best friend Maxwell at the age of 32 to alcohol and drugs. And it just makes sobriety for me. If only I knew now what, you know, then what I knew now to help those people, maybe I could have made a difference to them, you know, rather than thinking of all the times when we all session together. You never know. Actually, it just takes one last drink and it could be your last, you know.
Leanne, all I'll say about that is it's all in hindsight, isn't it? And you know,
Yeah.
listening to you there is just a huge journey of turmoil. And you know, I asked you before, what did you think of yourself there? And you touched on it after, of lack of self-worth and that, because it just seemed to me you were just getting through life the best way you can. And it sounds, everything you've dealt with has been really, really traumatic, and it feels like a lot of it you've dealt with on your own. So you become incredibly resilient, you know.
Mm.
And wow, honestly, I just sat there with my mouth open listening to that whole conversation. And it's easy, if you haven't had that problem with alcohol, it's easy to judge when you say you were drinking 3 or 4 bottles of wine a night when your daughter's in the next room and you didn't even feel tipsy. You were just coping the best way you can. And then afterwards you were diagnosed with mental illness. And that's when it was the beginning of your journey to seek help, you know. And you know, sometimes we underestimate mental illness, and I've been there. I've got home from the pub and thought, I want to kill myself. And I've gone through the drawers looking for tablets. My wife's in bed, kids are in bed, and there's me desperately trying to find it because I didn't know where to go in my life. I was in such a bad place, and it had nothing to do with how I felt about Em, nothing to do with how I felt about the kids. I just had nowhere else to turn, you know. So I totally understand that. So
I
for you
think
to
for
stop,
me, sorry, I think for me as well, I don't know about you, I just always, no one made me feel like this, but I just felt like a burden. I brought nothing but badness, you know, nothing good happened in my life. I've got, you know, I failed at this, I failed at that, you know, my daughter's poor, you know, just I've always felt like I came with no goodness. I just came with badness. And I think that's why I just had so little time for myself in the end, you know.
I know, and I understand that because I felt similar because I've said before, when my mum left, she left me a letter when I was 14, saying that she'd left. And then my dad met someone else pretty quickly. And my lack of self-worth was unfathomable. And then I got into the wrong crowd because they made me feel special, or wanted at least, because I was part of the gang. And I've lived my life like that, being a people pleaser, being an overthinker. But what's come from me stopping drinking now is that I've learned about myself, who I am authentically, and that I am good. And I'm now proud of myself. And what I've seen of you, Leanne, is this lifelong struggle that you've had, but the way you've turned it around now is so incredible, you know. Especially stopping drinking, then having 2 close friends die from it as well. And that could have easily been a platform for you to go, do you know what,
Drink
I
again.
said this, but you haven't.
And I have, you know, from the deaths of those 2 people, I have seen people in my circle of friends, you know, it has affected them and they are drinking more, you know. And there's one friend of mine who's actually, through me doing it, was the guy that I actually ran the bar with, who's also now gone sober, and he's 2 months sober now.
Wow.
And I think it is a case of, for me, it was life or death.
Mm.
And I hope people aren't at that stage where it's like, I don't want to live anymore. And I look back, and the love I have for my child, she's changed my life. How did I get to the point where I was going to leave that? How, the dark days were the darkest of times. And I think that's why now the thrive I have for life is just, I shock myself some days of, the things that I sit there in the morning in my bed and plan in my head.
Mm.
These are dreams that I'm making reality now, that are coming true. And it's not easy to, I remember sitting down with my parents and saying, I'm going to start talking about my journey, and I'm going to be open about it. And my dad went, I'm really proud of you.
Mm.
And that was a moment of time when I just, it's very hard as a parent, because I think about how I'd feel if Darcy was like me. Must be awful, to watch your child in this self-destructive mode. But what my dad and my mum see now is I turned it round. I could have carried on. I could have given up, but I didn't. And as my dad says, you don't know who, the value that you bring around you. He says that I've got like an aura around me, and that I was meant to be here to share everything. And I do believe sometimes, as you said, the resilience, for the million and one times I've been knocked or pushed or hit down, I've stood up again, and
Mm.
I've got
Yeah.
up stronger, and I've got up taller. And now it's about, I want to share my knowledge and my living experience with others, because I just don't want anyone to be sat like I was, looking at light fittings thinking, will that hold my weight? Will I be able to do it? Or is it going to work? Or, sitting planning which train you're going to jump off in front. It's a dark, dark time, and I can't believe that I was there. And some days I can't believe I'm out of it, because it's like a trickery thing, isn't it? You're on this recovery journey that I said earlier, because I actually posted on Instagram my goodbye letter to alcohol after I had a chat with you the other day, actually. And it was so hard and so poignant. But I said in my letter that we will never, me and alcohol will never be completely separated. We will never be divorced properly, because I always have to bump into you in the supermarket, at a party, at friends' houses. But I've just got to avoid you. And I know how to steer clear of you now. And I know that my goodbye is my final goodbye. You'll never pull me back into that bed, like an ex. It's over for good. Unfortunately, you can't block alcohol on social media and completely out your life, because it's always there. But what difference? And I have to say to anyone listening that is thinking about changing, even just changing their relationship with alcohol, because I went on for 28 years thinking that I didn't at all have a problem with drink. I was just a big drinker. I really look at what it brings to your life, and what, everyone can live without alcohol. It's whether you choose to. And
Mm.
it's the same for, most people. Alcohol leads on to other things, i.e. drugs, harder drugs, which are becoming so readily available for people to buy. You can order anything off the internet to get sent to your house now. You haven't even got to go and wait for a drug dealer. It's
Mm.
madness. It's just madness. And I look at the future of what we're trying to do within the sober community, because, say for instance, my daughter, like Darcy, because of the medication she's on, a drink alcohol would kill her. She can never drink. So another part of my mission is to make it socially acceptable, that people just don't drink, not because everyone is heavily addicted like I was, or because you know, even because of medication, some people just want a better life. And I think that's just so key in life. But I look back and I think that if I met someone like myself, even 5 years ago, I would have called myself a wanker. Why aren't you having a drink? What's wrong with you? You know, so
Yeah.
it massively, it's taught me about education. This whole sobriety process is that, you know, I wasn't educated. I can't be angry at society or at the world. I've just got to educate them, and I've
Yeah.
just got to
And I think what you've been through is tragic, but it's made you who you are today.
yeah.
And when you say you've got an aura around you, I see that. I do see that, and I've watched you on your lives on Instagram, and you're so focused and empathetic. You know, I've watched you. I study body language. You know, it's one of my things, and you've got real empathy. And now we've talked about it on this podcast, I can understand why, because you've really gone to a rock bottom several times, and you've come out of that now. And I see you almost becoming addicted to life now, living life to its fullest, helping other people see the perils of alcohol and the ways of the world with it and the ways without it, you know. And it's so powerful, Leanne.
I said the other day to someone, like, I am an addict. I will always be an addict. You know, my birth parents were addicts, which is part of the reason why, you know, I was adopted. I will always be an addict, but it's what I choose to get addicted to. And from the moment I was told that Darcy was poorly, I got addicted to hope, because it's all I had. And that throughout the whole process, throughout everything that we go to, you know, Darcy may not have the same life expectancy as another child, but I hope, and that's all I have is hope every day. But what I will do for the future and now is I will be present for every second I have with her, because it's so precious. I'm addicted to hope. I'm addicted to educating people, because, as I say, you know, you can't get cross at people if they don't know, you know, and I think that's key. And I'm addicted to sobriety, you know, from going from being such a, you know, my nickname was Winehouse. People used to call me Winehouse and think it was funny, and I'd be like, yeah, yeah. But now I'm addicted to sobriety and spreading the word, and, you know, focusing on how we can change people's mindset. Because I think that if I was taught at a young age, you know, or in school, of what this could do, or I could see a story when I was 15 of a 38-year-old woman, of what happened to her and everything that she went through, my choices would have been different. I'm not going to say that I probably wouldn't have had a drink, because which teenage kid doesn't want to try a bottle of pop? Do you know what I mean? But my life choices would have been different. And, you know, I'm here now. I do a completely different job. I'm now a writer. I've written a couple of books which are coming out next year, which I never thought would happen. You know, I'm working on apps with people. I get to work within the sober community. You know, life is wonderful. You know, for such a long time I hated the word life, and I think most of the time I just wished it away. And now I value every single second. Sometimes when I'm having a bad day, I just go and stand on my doorstep and I just sniff in the air.
Mm.
And that's, I would never think that I was a person that would do that, but to just have that air and have that moment and appreciate, I'm here, I'm alive. And the power that we have as human beings, that we can do, the nurture, the love that we can show other people, the kindness, is far better than, you know, the anger towards our own self-hating, loathing lives, you know. So I think for me it's just really flipped. And I think for all the bitterness, you know, I could dwell on everything that's happened to me, and I could, even in sobriety, I could still be really sad and really bitter about it and really, really angry. But I'm not. I just have to use that anger in a strength way and use it as power. and put my super cape on and go, you know what, girl, this happened to you because you can get over this, you can live with it, but then you have the power to show other people that this may happen, but there is life after all this. And, you know, there are choices. And I think that for so many years, I felt like the only choice I had was white powder or alcohol. And I had to break free. You know, I had to break free, and you can break free. It's not easy, as we all know. You know, yesterday I had a really bad day, and I'm sat there thinking, oh, I'd love a vodka now. I'd really love a vodka. The thought's never going to leave my head. I just have to be able to control it. You know.
Yeah, I'm the same. I walked past an All Bar One in the Strand the other day with Em, and there was all Christmas lights, and there were people with their heads knocking back, laughing with their pints in their hand, and I had a little twinge. Do you know what I mean? Of that ain't going to happen again. But it lasted briefly because I reminded myself of where I would be if I went down that road. And I'm like you. I'm aware that alcohol will never leave me. It's like an ex living in the next street, and every now and again you're going to bump into it. Some days you're going to feel strong and walk past, and other days you can think, "Oh, he or she looks really nice, and I miss them." But I'm in charge now, and it sounds like you're in charge, and you see it for exactly what it is. And what's interesting after this amazing hour that we've had together is that to get where you are now, you've removed one thing out of your life, and that's alcohol. And that has turned everything around, not just for you, but for Darcy, her future, your future, and all the hundreds and thousands of people that you're going to help in the future as well by even talking today, people listening to this and coming off the podcast and going, wow, just wow. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And just to think that if I'd have known, you know, going through all my life trying to fix myself through various things, you know, after a peak crashing down, if I'd have known that the one thing that I had to take away was alcohol, because alcohol for me, like I never did drugs on their own, you know, alcohol led on to drugs. So if I'd have known that I just had to take this one thing away, everything would have changed. I do wish that me and alcohol had never met, or maybe had a briefer love affair than we actually did. But I wish, you know, I'm lucky I've done it now, but I wish, you know, it is something that I wish, as we can all say in hindsight, I'd done it a lot sooner. But I know that the power and the years that I have left, the power with what I've gained from my sobriety, I will make a difference. And to also, you know, I've never really felt part of anything. I've never really fitted in. I've always been like clinging on to different groups. But the sober community, you know, what a thing that is to be like. I text people daily that I've never ever met, that I know that are like, they've turned into best friends. I met you through Instagram. This whole sober community is just such a wonderful thing to be involved in, of people that, you know, we're not bashing each other. We're all literally on the same page,
Yeah.
striding for
Supporting
the
each other.
same thing. Yeah, it's just, yeah, it's just absolute madness, and it's a wonderful thing to be part of. And I just see it getting bigger and bigger
Yeah,
and
and
better.
do you know what I see? I see a lot of your life of coping on your own, but now you've given up drinking, you've reached out for community, and we all pull each other up, you know. And all the people I talk to on my podcast are through the community that having our chats that we do every now and again, might send each other a message, and you know, it's so powerful, the strength of community, you know. And when we're drinking, we do feel like we're on a desert island on our own, and we feel like no
Yeah.
one understands, don't we? So it's really
Or we just
important.
drink around people that are, you
Drinking.
know, yeah, drinkers. Or, you know, I look back and I look at nights when, you know, there's people that I've drank with for 10 years. Could I tell you their surname? No.
Yeah.
You know, they're not real friends. They're just people that have facilitated
Yeah.
more drinking and more substance abuse or more partying. You know, they weren't people. I don't know if you've ever been in the same situation, but like I've woken up with strangers in my house, like, well, also in my bed, but
Mm.
you know, the abuse that I gave myself was
Yeah.
just horrendous, you know. And now I'm such a self-loving
Yeah. Well, you
hippie
got your
with them.
self-respect back, haven't you? And your
Yeah,
self-worth
that's it.
now. And you know where you
Yeah.
are now, and you've ripped the blinkers off and you can see the view.
And I think when you do get a real, you know, I'm not going to say I've completely got a handle on sobriety. I will never, I don't think until the day I die, I will say that. But when you've got a bit of a hold on it, you know how bad that place is. So you never want to go back there. And I think at the start of sobriety, you think, oh, well, I could just have one, or I could just do this and I could just do that. But when you're further away from it, when you're
Mm.
further away from the drinking person you were, you actually think, oh no, it gets more terrifying about the person that you were before, if that makes sense. Madness.
Yeah, it absolutely does make sense. It's like any relationship, isn't it? The longer it goes on, the more you deal with it and accept it, you know. And it's like that's the way I look at it. I look at exes now, and they don't mean anything to me, you know. Sorry,
Or
girls.
some of them can make you cringe and look at them and
Yeah,
go, oh, how was I with you?
yeah, but it's
Which
the
is
same
me
with
and alcohol.
alcohol now. Is that I've seen through it, and I look at it sometimes. Go, I see you for exactly what you are. Do you know what I mean? And that's
Yeah.
how I live my sobriety. Is that I'm in charge now. I'm aware it's around me, but I ain't letting it in. I'm not leaving the door open 1 millimeter by saying, "Oh, maybe I could have one." I'm not doing it because it's got such power that that 1 millimeter it'll open the door wide open and come in, and then it'll all start again. So I have to be in control, and it sounds like you are as well. And Leanne, I just want to thank you so much for being so
Mm.
honest on this podcast because it's been really unbelievable to listen to. And I think you should be so proud of yourself for where you are today. And I watch you and you grow and how you talk to people, inspire people. And I just think you're fantastic. So
Oh, thank
thank
you so
you.
much, Dave. Thank you for everything that you do. And I do genuinely feel that I wouldn't be sat here today without you, you know, and I
You
hope
would.
is to the future. No, you know, I do mean that on the dark days of the early sobriety, just to be able to go and look at someone's account because you're not ready to speak to someone and scroll down and read their wisdom and know that there is hope because you gave me hope is a wonderful thing. And I want to pass that forward. What you passed on to me, I want to pass on. And if we keep passing it on, I do
Mm.
genuinely feel like the world's going to be a different place in a few years, Dave. It's going to be a different place.
Well, I'm sure there's been thousands of people who've listened to this and been inspired by your journey. So thank you again. And
Yeah,
one day we will meet in real life,
we
hopefully.
will. We will.
And
Thank you, Dave.
meantime, you take care and thanks again, Leanne.
And you. Thanks, Dave.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.